What is radio? The adjective, of relating to or operated by radiant energy. The noun, the wireless transmission and reception of electric impulses or signal by means of magnetic waves. The verb, to send or communicate by radio or to send a message. No, none of that defines what I'm looking for. I'm trying to define black radio, the survival of black radio. But I looked in the dictionary and I could not correctly define black radio. So if such a word does not exist, why call it that? And is there a difference between radio and black radio?
Absolutely.
I think black radio or urban radio, as one would say, is different.
Yes, there is something different about black radio.
6 when you hear Cutie Pie from One Way. Caller number 6 when you hear Cutie Pie from One Way. In the tunnel, I heard it through the grapevine. Here's Roger.
My name is Carl E. Tinson Jr. I am a disc jockey at WHUR 96.3 Howard University Radio in Washington, D.C. If you really look back, I've been probably in radio since 1964. I started at WANN in Annapolis and eventually came to the then WOL here in Washington and stayed at WOL in Washington until 1977. Then I got out of radio in 1977, returned to radio in 2002 here at WHUR. Well, I think I've always wanted to be an entertainer. When I was a child, I used to put together circuses and move them around the house as if I was a circus promoter. I used to do puppet shows. I basically put together marionettes when I was a child. I had puppet shows in the neighborhood. I did talent shows. I always wanted to be in show business. And I think radio gave me an opportunity to basically reach thousands of people just by using my voice, and I thought that was a great form of entertainment.
My name is Terrence Jackson. I'm a producer / engineer for various shows here at WHUR. Wow, what interested me about radio? First of all, I was just always excited with the whole aspect of just being on the radio or being able to do certain things to put stuff on the radio. Radio is huge. It's a big form of mass communications, and I have a lot of love and passion for radio. I've been around radio maybe just practically all my life for like the last, I'm not going to say all my life, but half of my life I've been around radio, and I just always had a love for it, first-hand experience of it, so that's really what attracted me to radio, is my love for it and being around it.
My name is Ray Baker, and I am a programming assistant at WHUR World. I got started in radio by participating at WHBC when I was a student at Howard University, and something called Glass House Radio, which is talk radio here at Howard University for collegiate students, and it's internet-based. Yes, there is something different about black radio. However, I wouldn't term it radio and black radio. I would just term it radio, mainstream radio, and black radio.
There's a difference. Radio, first of all, in black radio, things are more tight-knit, okay? There's a certain audience that we can put our voices out there to black people. White, I'm not going to say white, regular radio is more commercialized. Black radio is, in a sense, but black radio is more of a people's thing. It's more people's, a sense of purpose, of a family bond, if you will, that you are on the radio and you're reaching out to your people, and your people can relate to you, and they can be able to get their message across to each other and have their voice heard. In a sense, where as opposed to regular radio, they may not be able to have their voices heard, or they may be able to touch on certain things that relate in the black community, as opposed to what may happen in the regular community per se.
Black radio or urban radio, as one would say, is different. Black radio is more personality driven. The other type of radio is just basically about music. Although black radio / urban radio is starting to become more like the generic radio. People are listening to radio now for music, of course, with all the satellite stations, Sirius, XM and everything. People just want to hear music. They don't want to hear a guy talking about something that really doesn't make a lot of sense. So even, with my format here at WHUR, we tend to play more music. We play 35, 40-minute music sets, non-stop, no conversation. I try not to talk about something unless it has a meaning. An old friend of mine who first started me in radio, a guy by the name of Morris Blum at WANN, said to me, Brother Henson, you should say 50% of everything you think you should say, cut that in half and think about the other half and play the music. And that's basically what is going on right now. People listen to radio because of the quality and the type of music that they want to hear. Syndication is good because you've got personalities like Steve Harvey, Michael Bazin, just people that are just very, very good, that have 60, 70 stations. But let me tell you something, if you're that good and you have a good show, you're going to be syndicated. So, these guys are making money, and I think it's great that they're doing that.
I think syndication is ruining all forms of radio. But again, that's the whole idea of art and commerce meeting. And so whenever art and commerce meets, commerce always wins and art suffers. So radio, be it country, be it black radio, which is traditionally referred to as urban, hip-hop, R&B, things of the sort, be it light musical things of the sort, alternative rock, soft rock, hard rock, any form of radio, whenever it suffers under syndication, it lacks a sense of uniqueness and a sense of individuality that helps make it so special in the first place.
If more minorities was given an opportunity to own stations, what I mean is getting into certain stations, learning the business, developing those internships that leads to permanent jobs and to move up the career ladder to the point where you can become an owner. A lot of the ways of getting ownership is one, not only getting capital, but also having the ability and the means to understand business. And once you understand the business, you thoroughly understand it, you can use those skill sets to be able to make the capital that in return will lead to you owning a station.
The biggest owner right now, of course, is Radio 1. Kathy Hughes has 60, 70 stations or more. And there are some smaller ownerships up in the New York area. But basically, that is a fading entity. Bob Johnson sold BET Television. And, now that's owned by a larger conglomerate that is not African American or not minority. I think eventually, and this is not a prediction, this is something I think will really happen. Eventually, there will be no such thing as quote-unquote black-owned radio. I think all radio stations will eventually be owned by syndicates, large conglomerates.
Well, yes, I see a problem with lack of black ownership in radio, but again, I think that's systemic of the lack of black ownership in other fields of life and other walks and avenues. The European proverb says, "He who pays the piper calls the tune." So if you're not owning, you can't have any real expectation of being able to dictate what's going to go on. And so black radio, particularly some of the nuances as far as being the voice of the community, the place to articulate the different issues, ideas, goals, and values of our shared living space, don't really get an opportunity to express themselves in those places on account of the fact that we don't own these spaces. So once we don't own these spaces, we can no longer dictate what needs to happen in these airwaves. Also, take a look at with consolidation and syndication, you see this concept of less talk, more music. Well, the reason why folks want less talk is because the idea is that talk speaks of information. And so the more information you're giving out, the more people are informed. Now, I don't think this is a grand conspiracy to keep black Americans or anyone else for that matter uninformed. However, there's a general dumbing down of the culture, both black and otherwise. And so consolidation and other forms of syndication and the lack of black ownership, and in some cases, even black ownership, really heighten and emphasize this sense of dumbing down. And so that's again when we go back to this concept of art and commerce mixing, commerce winning, and art suffering.
WHUR. Tony Richards is next with part 2 of the Saturday Party. A very special thanks to the Time Tunnel family, Mike Kelsey, our producer, Terrence Jackson, of course, our production engineer, and Jill Mays, our research writer. Remember, it's nice to be somebody important, but it's more important to be nice to somebody. And if you don't think you're as close to God as you used to be, make no mistake about which one of you have gone astray. Until next week in the Time Tunnel, this is Mr. C with This Very Moment. Who loves you, baby? See ya.